In the fourth year of my marriage to Asher, his first love returned home after her divorce. To make matters worse, I was diagnosed with cancer, terminal. With less than half a year left to live, I continued playing the role of Asher's perfect wife. Right up until the day I died, it wasn't until Asher read the journal I left behind that he completely broke down. When I received that thin sheet of paper, the diagnosis, I stood at the hospital entrance, wanting to call Asher. I opened and closed the contacts list several times. His number appeared on the screen first. His voice on the other end was as cold and distant as ever, though it softened slightly when he said my name. Celine, something came up tonight. I won't be home for dinner. I'll be back late. Don't wait up. All the words I wanted to say caught in my throat. Okay. As usual, my reply was short. The busy tone followed. I stood there, still holding the phone to my ear. The setting sun bled across the sky like spilled wine. Asher and I had been married for 4 years, and I had loved him for nearly 10, and I was lucky. He had been under pressure from his family to marry, going on blind dates constantly. Then he met me. I looked acceptable, had a decent background, and so we agreed to register our marriage directly. Asher needed a wife. I happened to qualify. He's a cold person, not talkative, rarely showing emotion. His face always unreadable. I wrapped my warmth around this block of ice for 2 years, and eventually, it began to melt. For me, we started becoming like a real couple, living an ordinary life of shared meals and laundry. It was slowly becoming the marriage I had dreamed of, but now, that fragile dream was about to shatter, because today, the doctor confirmed it was pancreatic cancer. And I also knew today was the day his first love, Vivian, returned. That's why he hung up my call. He was on his way to see the one he truly cared for. I didn't eat. I waited in the living room for him for a long time. As night deepened, I was awakened from my doze by the sound of the door opening. Asher stepped in quietly, gently closed the door behind him, even his footsteps light. When the lights came on, our eyes met. He paused briefly, then frowned slightly. Why aren't you asleep? I dozed off here by accident. I smiled at him. I woke when I heard you. He gave a quiet his face calm as always. I stepped forward and took his coat. The scent of sandalwood mixed with gardenia filled my nose, sharp and nauseating, Vivian's favorite perfume. On the day I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, my husband had driven to the airport to pick up his first love. I should have asked him about it. But my mouth opened, and no words came out, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, I still got up early, like I always did, to make breakfast for Asher. Asher has stomach problems. When it got serious, he had to stay in the hospital for over 2 weeks. I stayed with him the whole time. The nurses and doctors all said he had found a wonderful wife. Asher sat on the hospital bed, pale and tired, but when he looked at me, there was no emotion in his eyes. When we were alone, he said, a hired nurse could do the same. My hand paused as I peeled fruit, the skin snapping. If realizing his words, he added, you don't have to wear yourself out like this. It's not the same. Though, in truth, it probably was. But we always believe that doing something personally feels more meaningful. When it's someone you love, you always care more than others would. What's the difference? He asked. I smiled at him, gave a completely unrelated answer. You're my husband. His stomach problems never fully healed. After he was discharged, I kept trying to nourish him back to health. Asher is a workaholic. He often forgets to eat when he's busy. I'd make him breakfast in the mornings. When I had time, I'd bring him lunch at the office. If I couldn't, I'd remind him to eat on time. A few years went by like that. It became a habit, like waking up early. Today, Asher got up earlier than usual. I didn't have time to help with his tie before he grabbed the lunchbox on the table and hurried out. At the door, he paused and looked back at me standing in the living room. For a moment, there was a trace of warmth on his normally expressionless face, like snow thawing under morning light. I'm heading out, Celine. Take care on the road. Like so many mornings before, I hadn't planned to bring him lunch that day. It was a spontaneous decision that I didn't tell Asher. The receptionist at his office recognized me and let me up with a friendly greeting. I had been to Asher's office many times. He always introduced me to everyone openly. This is my wife. That word, wife, had an old-fashioned ring to it. Yet it evoked a sense of timeless devotion, and I had once truly believed we would go on like that forever. But life loves playing cruel jokes. First it gives you a dream, then shatters it in front of you. IT lets you glimpse the grim reality beneath the wreckage. Just like now, I saw my husband speaking with a woman he hadn't seen in years. She was holding the lunchbox I had packed for him. Vivian hadn't changed much. She still looked the same as in college. Long hair over her shoulders and a smile like a sly, harmless cat. "Thanks, Mr. Vale. The breakfast was delicious." "No problem," Asher replied as he took the lunchbox from her hands. Vivian looked like she was about to say something more, until she suddenly noticed me standing nearby. Her eyes lit up in surprise, curving into little crescents. "Celine? It's been so long." She hurried toward me and tried to grab my hand. But then her eyes fell on the lunchbox in my hand and she froze. "You came to bring Asher lunch? So, the breakfast earlier, you made that too?" "I'm sorry," she said, laughing awkwardly. "I have a bit of low blood sugar, and Asher said I could eat it. If I'd known it was from you, I wouldn't have touched it." Vivian gave me a sheepish smile. "But I still have to say, Celine, you cook really well." "Of course I do. Asher has a sensitive stomach and a picky palate. I train myself, little by little, to suit his tastes." He knew that I smiled back, too. But behind my back, my hand curled into a fist. My fingernails nearly pierced my palm. Did I end that moment? Beyond anger, I felt a deep, bitter resentment. And then, my plan for revenge began to take shape, piece by piece. Asher wouldn't cheat. Although I was still terrified by Vivian's return, I forced myself to play the role of a dutiful wife. The chains of morality and responsibility were around him. I didn't know who would break first in the end. Him or me. One evening when he came home, he brought me a gift. A pink diamond sparkled under the light, its design delicate and clearly expensive. It was beautiful, but I didn't like it. I rarely wore jewelry. Only when attending dinners with Asher did I dress up. Asher was not talkative. I knew the gift was nothing more than his apology and attempt at compensation for what happened that morning. I still smiled and accepted it. His expression softened slightly. I didn't know if it was because I didn't fuss, or because I wasn't angry towards Vivian. I tossed the box into a drawer. I got into bed before him, but I couldn't fall asleep. When he finally returned to the room and lay down beside me, the familiar scent of sandalwood enveloped me. The man gently inhaled my warmth from behind, through thin clothing. I closed my eyes and breathed steadily. Though he drifted to sleep behind me, I remained wide awake. The discomfort in my upper abdomen intensified. I opened my eyes. Moonlight streamed through the window in pale silver. I stared for a very long time, until the world felt silent and I seemed utterly alone. Only then did I, belatedly, remember. I was dying. The next morning, after sending Asher off, a notification popped up on my phone calendar. I glanced at it and remembered. It was the day I promised to visit my mother. My parents divorced when I was young. He didn't love her and had been seeing someone else. His daughter was older than me. My mother raised me alone, working tirelessly. I vowed to study hard for her sake, but I didn't have good luck. I became a target for a clique of bullies in school. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, maybe it was my clothes or a careless remark, I couldn't tell my mom. The teachers failed to stop them. The more I resisted, the worse it became. On that day, surrounded by many, I almost wanted to take everything down with me. The rough feel of bricks in my bag comforted me somewhat. The girl in charge looked at me with scorn, about to deliver her verdict. When Asher appeared, he was smart and knew this wouldn't happen just once. He consciously intervened and blocked their attempts to resume torment. I survived those 3 middle school years safely, and because of that, I dared to chase him wholeheartedly, got into the same university, became a better person. But I still came too late. Just as Asher was my light, he once had his own light too. Vivian, my half-sister. I took a small gift for my mother. Now she had a new family. I sat there for a few minutes, spoke politely, said goodbye. Then I got a taxi home. At the apartment gate, I saw them from afar. Vivian and Asher walking side by side. I don't know what they were talking about, but I saw my usually reserved husband curve the corner of his mouth into a smile, a soft glint at the edge of his eyes. I froze in place. They were laughing, when suddenly a dirty little dog darted out from the bushes and barked at Vivian twice. The two stopped. She reached out to pet it, but the dog snarled and leapt at her legs. She shrieked and climbed into Asher's arms. He steadied her, his hand briefly on her waist before swiftly pulling away. As he turned his head, I was standing there. Vivian reacted faster than he did. Celine. I came forward, stunned. Before she could say anything, I knelt and scooped up the dirty dog. It seemed frightened too. It crawled into my arms but didn't struggle. Asher, I smiled. I'm going to keep this one. The mood instantly went cold. I merely smiled and repeated, I'm going to keep it. Asher accompanied me to the vet. The dog was examined and found to have many health issues, broken bones, scratches on its abdomen, countless minor ailments. Yet it was so well behaved during the exam, quietly lying still. Asher looked at me, hesitating to speak. Even on the ride home, he said nothing. The dog stayed hospitalized. I named her Luna. When we got back, the air between us was suddenly rigid. Asher still said nothing. I remained silent too. When we finally entered the bedroom, the warm orange glow turned the space cozy. I sat on the bed, watching Asher enter in pajamas. The soft light softened his sharp features. He seldom showed emotion. If I ever saw him smile, it was only a fleeting curve of his lips, like the bloom of a fleeting flower, vanishing quickly. I didn't know how much he felt for me. Over the years, I thought he had at least a little. But after Vivian came back, those thoughts suddenly seemed ridiculous. Asher, I called softly. He looked up at me, innocent and cold gazing. Do your words still mean anything? What words? You said, I am your wife. You said you would always treat me well. I smiled at him. But Asher suddenly lowered his gaze, voice distant. Why are you asking this all of a sudden? Nothing. I just remembered. A dull pain in my upper abdomen crept in, and discomfort around my waist worsened at night. Nerves twitched in my brain as if a rope was being wound tighter and tighter. I will, he replied at that moment. And the room's lamp instantly went dark. His warm breath fell on my cheek, followed by a gentle kiss. Good night, Celine. As his breathing softened behind me, I gently disentangled myself from his embrace and turned to face him. In the moonlight, I traced the lines of his face inch by inch, from brow to chin. Asher would not betray me, but every part of him still thought of Vivian, and I suddenly wondered, after I died, if Asher looked back on this moment, what would he feel? The day I left the hospital, I thought about so many things, until they all tangled into one chaotic ball in my mind. The first thought that surfaced, if I die, what will Asher do? He'd marry again. And I thought, Vivian is divorced, he's lost his wife, the two might end up together. That's fine. Except, definitely not now. So, I changed my mind. The first time I met Vivian was on my 10th birthday. That day, my mother finally had a free afternoon and took me out to a fancy restaurant. It was upscale, every dish expensive, yet she only ordered a few items. Not far from us sat a family of 3, laughing and chatting, while my mother and I remained quiet. The little girl at their table wore a beautiful princess dress and a glowing crown on her head, giggling constantly. Her father sat across from her, snapping photos non-stop. When he got up to go to the restroom, the familiar profile made me drop my fork onto the table with a clatter. My mother noticed my reaction, followed my gaze, then casually glanced back. Want to go say hello? She asked calmly. After all, he's your father too. When he returned to the seat, the little girl ran over and hugged him, and he hoisted her up. Both of them smiled so brightly, I shook my head. My memories of my father were hazy. He never showed me affection, and whenever I reached out, he rebuked me coldly. His absence in my life confused me for a long time. Later, I understood. He simply didn't love me. Everything that seemed unattainable to me appeared easy for Vivian. I continued to act as if I knew nothing, treating Asher well. I occasionally smelled gardenia on his clothes. Whenever I saw Vivian's social media posts, I always noticed traces of Asher in the background, subtle but unmistakable. I lingered on each post for a while, and then quietly liked it. But I never said anything. I preserved outward peace while harboring a storm beneath. Unlike before, I quit my job, brought Celine home, and resumed writing in a journal every day, recording the boring routines and how my body felt. I started suffering sleepless nights. My abdomen ached constantly. I cooked for Asher each day, but when it was my turn to eat, I stared at the dishes for long minutes with no appetite. When I visited my mother again, we spoke for just a few minutes as usual. As she was distracted, I slipped my password-protected bank card, holding most of my savings, into a book on the table. This would be the last time I saw her. She walked me to the gate and looked at me. "Take care of your health." "Thank you. You too." My mother would live a good life. She never loved my father and not me, but she still fulfilled her duty as a mother, raising me healthily. Eventually, karma struck. My father went bankrupt. Yet my mother found her happiness. She married someone she loved, had my little brother, and their family of 3 lived harmoniously. That evening, Asher came home earlier than usual. I had just finished cooking, and the steam still rose from the dishes. It had been a long time since we'd eaten like this. Since Vivian returned, he had become increasingly busy. Asher was polite and raised not to eat or talk in company. I used to think just sitting silently together felt beautiful. Asher methodically served food. I took 2 bites, then lost my appetite. My abdomen started aching again. At that moment, Luna scampered downstairs and darted under the table. I put down my chopsticks. Asher looked at me. I explained, "I'll get Luna some food." Luna's room was on the 2nd floor. I had cleared an old storage room to be her kennel. The food bowl was empty. I added more kibble. Luna wagged her tail and ate quietly. I watched her for a moment. It lifted my spirits. But then the pain in my abdomen sharpened. A metallic, sweet taste filled my throat. I pressed my hand to my mouth. When I removed it, deep red blood on the paper stung my eyes. Luna abruptly stopped, turned, and barked at my legs. I grabbed a tissue, wiped away the blood, balled the tissue up, and tossed it. I crouched and stroked her head tightly. "I'm okay," I whispered. She barked twice more, then didn't eat. She clambered at me again. I picked her up. She stopped barking and nuzzled into me. A knock rattled the doorframe. Asher stood at the entrance, watching us. Softly he said, "Eat first, Celine." I had no appetite, but forced myself to finish. Asher washed the dishes. When he came back, he saw me on the sofa playing with Luna and sat beside me. "Celine, I've been busy lately. Once things slow down, how about I take you to an island? A vacation?" I rubbed Luna's ears and replied, "Okay." Going on an island vacation with Asher had always been on my wish list. Back then, we hardly knew each other. We didn't honeymoon, just normal routines, work and home. Later, we grew closer, and I dreamed of a belated honeymoon trip with him. I didn't tell him directly, only hinted. But as a workaholic, he kept postponing. Now, he brought it up himself. I glimpsed him watching me, his eyes softening. I pretended not to notice. Then he said, "There's a banquet next Wednesday. Are you free? Will you go with me?" My hand froze. Then I quickly regained composure. "I won't go." He didn't ask more, just nodded. My gaze stayed on Celine, not him. Vivian had just returned. Her network was small, she wouldn't miss this kind of banquet. If she asked Asher to go with her, he wouldn't refuse. Luna sighed softly in my lap. I stroked her head. Asher probably didn't expect me to show up at a banquet he attended with Vivian behind my back, but I did. The banquet. Lights dazzled, suited men and jeweled women mingled. Glasses clinked. Laughter filled the hall. I stood at the edge, out of place, as if an intruder. Finding Asher wasn't hard. After all, I had chased him for over a decade. I had countless times scanned the crowd searching for him. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, tall and elegant. On his arm was a woman wearing a red dress that bloomed like a rose. It was Vivian. I watched them weave through the glittering crowd, laughing and talking animatedly, seemingly a perfect match made in heaven. Even though I had expected to see such a scene, witnessing it felt like being slapped hard. My heart pounded violently. Anxious vines coiled tightly around it, squeezing until it felt like it might burst. The tangled threads in my mind unraveled into a chaotic knot, veins pulsing at my temples. Yet I did nothing. I stood there, watching them linked arm in arm, greeting everyone around them with smiles. I saw someone walk over to Asher, tap him on the shoulder, and subtly point in my direction. Asher turned his head. I wasn't wearing any beautiful dress, and I had lost so much weight. I hadn't dared to look in the mirror for a long time, afraid to see my protruding cheekbones or the subtle outline of a skull-faced shell. I knew he saw me because his face changed instantly, sour, ugly. Through the parting crowd, our eyes met from a distance. I stood quietly, neither smiling nor crying. When I saw the expression shift on his face, he wrenched free from Vivian's grip and started toward me, pushing through the crowd with difficulty. But then I turned and gave him a smile, and walked away from the place. When I got home, I went straight to my old room. The chaotic threads in my mind tangled further, impossible to untangle. The vines in my heart only constricted tighter, like they would explode the next moment. I could no longer stay calm. I swept everything off my desk onto the floor, causing loud crashes. But that wasn't enough. I ripped at the books on the shelves, paper fragments drifting down like mistimed snowfall. Still not enough. I destroyed the knickknacks, my cosmetics, the delicate souvenir Asher had brought back from a business trip, even the wooden blocks we had built together. The urge to destroy, to be cruel, tangled with emotional impulses blazing in my mind. My room became a wreck, a reflection of my broken life. When I finally came to my senses, the scissors were pressed to my arm. Luna was right by my legs, barking frantically. Her shrill, urgent cries stopped once she saw me lowering my head. She then pressed her silly open mouth against my leg. The scissors clattered to the ground. Luna leaped into my arms, barking the whole time. I held her, and she snuggled against me, furry and warm. Tears streamed down my face. All the destructive impulse faded. Destruction brought no satisfaction, only a bottomless, dark hole in me. By the time Asher came home, I had already tidied the room. He wanted to speak, but I was sitting on the sofa smiling at him. I knew he wanted to explain, but didn't know how. I'd stood by him for 4 years. We moved through this glittering stage together. Asher ungifted in words but logical. Every sentence he uttered cold and clipped. I was the one who taught him little by little how to handle things, how to deal with those old-timers. Now he navigated these social events with ease, yet remained reticent when the curtain closed. Back then, I thought I loved him no matter what, but now I wondered if perhaps we just didn't speak much. I smiled and stopped him gently with my words. It's okay, I know Vivian just returned to the country and doesn't have her social circle yet. You wanted to help her, so you brought her to the banquet. Asher's face changed slightly. Yes, that's all right. I continued softly, I don't mind. He looked at me without a word. Our eyes locked. I kept gazing at him gently. After a long moment, he averted his gaze. Then suddenly, he pulled me into a tight embrace, as if he wanted to embed me inside his body, breathless. His warm breath brushed my ear, Celine. So intimate. You've become so thin. I smiled but didn't respond. The smell of sandalwood mixed with gardenia surrounded us, and I forced down the nausea rising in my throat. The next morning, I sent him off as usual. Then he paused in the living room, gently calling Celine. I forgot to tie my tie. Half exasperated, I went upstairs, fetched one for him, and handed it over. Asher lowered his head. Help me, Celine. I did as asked, tying it for him. He stood quietly, seeming obedient. When I finished, all set, I felt his arms suddenly lock around my waist, pulling me closely against him. I lifted my head and whispered, Veil. Words stuck in my throat. A warm flush spread across my lips. He kissed me fiercely, possessively, as if tearing down a disguise. When we parted, his eyes clouded with faint redness. I looked at him, silent. He pressed another kiss to my forehead, a subtle lift to his lips. "I'm going now, Celine." I smiled and said goodbye. Later, I had made an appointment with Vivian at a coffee shop at 10 in the morning. As usual, I arrived early and waited 30 minutes before she finally showed up. Vivian was stunning. Before my father's ruin, her life had been comfortable. After that, she was lucky. She married abroad, was now divorced and back in the country, and had Asher helping her every step. So fortunate. Vivian sat across from me, flawlessly made up, smiling sweetly. Meanwhile, I had dark circles beneath my eyes, had become gaunt, and my complexion was terrible. "Celine, why did you suddenly ask me out?" she asked. We never had a close connection. At most we were school acquaintances, yet she called me familiarly. I didn't drink the fruit tea placed before me. Its chill brought my thoughts sharply into focus. "You've already ordered?" Vivian's eyes flickered to the table, and she called to the waiter. "An iced Americano, please." She propped her chin on her hand and smiled at me. "Your Mr. Vale loves iced Americanos too." "I didn't used to, but I've come to like them recently." I sipped some fruit tea, refraining from responding. Vivian's smile was submissive and innocent. She was also the one who first told me about her divorce and return. The person unblocked me on WeChat after years. Polite, yet with unmistakable pride, as if eagerly announcing, "I'm back, and I'm taking your husband." Once the taste of fruit tea faded, only bitterness remained in my mouth. Vivian's iced Americano hadn't arrived yet, but her gaze stayed fixed on me. I met her gaze, and a cold smile deepened at the corner of my mouth. "Speaking of which, thanks to your—" A sudden, loud interruption carried through the hall. A couple of seated guests craned their necks and glanced our direction. Vivian froze, her pale cheeks flushing red, as if stunned by my sudden slap. She covered her face and turned to look at me. "Cell," she began. I didn't want to hear her say my name. It wouldn't suffice. I slammed the fruit tea on the table, lifted it, and poured it over her head. The dark liquid dripped through her hair, splattering onto the table and staining her white blouse. The lemon slices, peach pieces, and pulp from the cup clung to her hair, clothes, and purse. Her makeup wasn't waterproof, her eyeshadow smudged grotesquely. It looked both ridiculous and pitiful. Her face tightened. Dozens of eyes in the cafe were now watching us intently, hanging on our every movement. Vivian's eyes reddened. Tears welled as she tried to appear pitiable. "Celine, what are you?" "Vivian," I interrupted coldly. "You know exactly what you did. Don't play the innocent act in front of me." Tears glimmered in her eyes, wavering between falling and holding back. "You came back for Asher. You knew he'd treat you well. You wanted to steal him away. Isn't that right?" I said calmly, watching. Her face drained of color for a moment before she regained composure. She pulled a tissue from her bag and slowly wiped at the stains on her face. "Yes," Vivian confessed, lips curving into a smile of cold determination. Voice lowered. "Celine, matters of the heart can't be forced." She'd already lost face, but I looked at her and suddenly laughed. "You're right. Vivian, shall we make a bet? If you win, he'll be yours. I'll step aside willingly. You don't have to bear the guilt of being the other woman." Vivian gazed at me quietly, smiling faintly. "All right," she said. When Asher returned, I was in my room writing in my diary. Hearing him open the door, I set down my pen and tucked the book into the drawer. As of late, he'd come home quite early. Sometimes we walked Luna together at night. That evening, while I sat reading in bed, he suddenly leaned in and hugged me tightly. I leaned against him, feeling the warmth from someone else's body. His chin rested on my head while we read the sensational romance novel I was holding. In the story, the male lead protected the secondary female lead, who then slapped the female protagonist. The heroine cried out, "I am your wife." The male lead continued to back up the secondary character. The heroine cried and eventually left him. Then he realized what he lost and pursued her with regret until the story ended happily. By midnight, I thought of the sleeping pills in the other room and tried to wriggle free, but he wouldn't let go. I called out, "Asher?" His reply was soft. The room fell utterly silent. I could hear his heartbeat. "Celine Whitmore," he murmured, burying his head in my shoulder, a faint note of hurt in his voice. "You never used to call me by my full name," I said, feeling a soft amusement. Asher had always called me Miss Whitmore, politely distant. Now we had both changed. I turned toward him, wrapping my arm around his waist, and said, "Asher." He gazed at me, quietly studying every nuance of emotion in my face. Before lowering his eyes and drawing us closer, "Celine, I had never known he could express affection so deeply. But if he truly loved me, why did he care so much about Vivian?" A week passed since I met Vivian. Our wedding anniversary was approaching. Asher had grown especially clingy. When I reached my 100th entry in the diary, that very day was our anniversary too. I casually mentioned a wish, and Asher remembered. He came home early and spent the afternoon in the kitchen decorating our home. I went out with Luna and returned to a beautifully arranged house. The dinner table was fragrant, and Asher stood nearby, the corners of his mouth curved in a gentle smile. Soft roses, romantic music, champagne. Everything felt perfect. Under champagne lay 2 plane tickets dated for the day after tomorrow. I glanced at Asher, then at the tickets and smiled. The clock on the wall pointed to 8. Everything had been so perfect until Vivian called. Tears stained her face, her voice trembling between sobs. She called him with their old intimate nickname. "Asher, I feel terrible. I'm in a strange place, all alone. Please come help me." Asher, romantic atmosphere shattered in an instant. All Asher did was glance at me. That single look I understood. "Celine, I'm sorry. I'll take her to the hospital and come back soon," he told me. I asked him, "Could you not go?" He looked at me in silence. The air turned cold. I watched his smile vanish. He reverted to the distant Asher from 4 years ago. Cold. As if a stranger to me again, he averted his eyes, but reassured me. "I'll be right back. I won't miss our anniversary." We seemed at odds. Finally, I relented. "All right." Asher turned toward the door. I watched his silhouette from the living room. When he glanced back, I smiled, just like countless mornings before. A dutiful wife bidding farewell. "Be careful on the road," he said. "Sure." I watched him disappear into the night. Music still played faintly from the speakers. I hurled the speaker to the ground, and all sound disappeared in the crash. I turned and walked back to my room. Asher would not return tonight, I knew it. Vivian had won. But I had not lost. Back in my room, I locked the door behind me, pulled out my diary, and flipped to the newest page. The final page. I struggled to write. All the events in my mind unraveled again, like unreadable code. My abdomen, head, heart, felt sliced open. I suddenly felt a bone-deep cold seeping through me. My hand trembled, but I wrote every stroke. August 25th, 20XX. Today is our wedding anniversary. Asher cooked. He decorated our home. He had planned to take me on a vacation to an island tomorrow. But Vivian called. Asher went to see Vivian. He left me behind. I'll never go to the island now. Goodbye, Asher. Tears fell onto the page, ink blooming into blotches. But I felt no sadness. Those tears weren't from grief. They were pain. I lived on love. Since no one loved me, I only lived on my love for Asher. I once loved Asher so deeply. After that wholehearted devotion was completely exhausted, I was left with nothing but a shell, like a candle burned to its end. I won't last long. Even the last of my love for Asher dissipated today. After writing the final word, I sat at the desk and laughed heartily, satisfied. My role in this play ended today. Why did I hide so much from Asher? Why pretend to ignore their affair? Why give Vivian a chance? What I gave Vivian was not a vine climbing a branch. It was a sharp knife. The living can't compete with the dead. It didn't matter whether Asher loved me. But he would never forget me. He would feel guilty. I want him to feel guilt and regret. I want him to read this diary and relive my feelings over and over for the rest of his life, to remember how, step by step during my terminal illness, he drove his wife into a deeper and deeper despair. This absurd stage play crescendos with my death. After that, it's Asher and Vivian's turn. I swallowed the hard sleeping pills raging in my throat, forcing everyone down. On the table was not only my diary, but also a cookbook I had meticulously compiled for him, his strict palate, his sensitive stomach. I'd refined these recipes over 4 years. A grand gift for him, I lay quietly on the bed, hands folded, waiting for death. The room was silent, until I heard a dog barking outside the door. Something heavy pounded on the door again, and again with dull thuds. I stared at the ceiling, indifferent. Celine was still calling. But drowsiness took me over, consciousness slipping away. A great panic overwhelmed Asher, as though he was about to lose the most precious thing. It was like that day in the ballroom, seeing Celine standing across the room, pale and thin, looking like she would disappear at any moment. Only one thought pounded in his mind: hold her. Don't let her leave. But she still walked away. That terror consumed him. He even forgot why he had gone to the banquet. After an hour and more of absent-mindedness, he rushed home. He thought Celine would be angry, jealous, upset. But she wasn't. She simply sat on the couch and smiled at him, soft, gentle, and saved him from embarrassment. That uncertainty spiraled instead of calming, unchecked by reassurance. I'm okay. She loves me. He always knew that. As straightforward, passionate, loyal as she was, he knew she would forgive. So when Vivian's weary, tearful call came, uttering that once familiar nickname, he couldn't refuse. He thought Celine would understand. He drove Vivian to the hospital, stayed for the 4-drip, and as he prepared to leave, she unexpectedly took his sleeve. Her eyes still wet with tears, voice shaking. Asher, stay with me, please? He wanted to decline. He had promised Celine he wouldn't miss their anniversary. But Vivian looked so fragile late at night, and he couldn't stiffen his heart. He returned early the next morning. The living room lights were still on, an unlit warmth in dawn's dim glow. He hurried inside, anxious to see Celine. He had broken his promise. But she wasn't in the bedroom, nor the study, nor her old room. She was nowhere. The dinner on the table had gone cold, untouched. In the corner lay the smashed speakers, broken from someone's forceful throw. Only a few of her clothes were gone. Just Celine. Celine was angry. Asher thought she'd gone traveling in a huff. No problem. She would calm down in a few days, and he could apologize and explain. But days passed. Celine never returned. No one knew where she was. Her phone was off. Her coworkers said she resigned 3 months ago. Her mother said she hadn't seen her in a month. Please tell her when she's ready to retrieve the bank card. I don't need her money. She can keep it herself. The middle-aged woman spoke politely and distantly. Finally, Asher sensed something was wrong. A panic swept back like a tsunami, stronger than before. Asher began tracking Celine's movements, social posts, dashcam footage. Her life seemed simple those days. A morning walk, grocery shopping, lunch, playing with Luna. Days repeated. But sometimes she drove to the hospital. Asher wasn't a fool. The facts lined up. A waking glimpse of her at the bedside looking out the window when she couldn't sleep, her growing thinness in his arms, the silence at dinner, and her furrowed brow. He didn't believe it, but because she told him nothing. He could not believe it. Asher searched for her for a long time, but Celine had vanished. 1.5 months later, a stranger called him. Celine had died at a convalescent home on an island. When he arrived, her ashes had already been scattered at sea. He was met by Celine's caregiver, a young woman, cold and distant. In Celine's room, she handed him 3 notebooks. These are Miss Whitmore's diary and other records. She hesitated, then added, Miss Whitmore asked me to burn them, but I thought Mr. Vale should have seen them. She looked at Asher one last time, her eyes hidden in chill. Asher sat quietly in that room all afternoon. Late afternoon sunlight warmed the room, but He felt like someone choking him at the throat. May 17th, 2022. The doctor confirmed I have pancreatic cancer. He looked at me with pity. I barely heard anything he said. Basically, it can't be cured. He urged me to start hospitalization soon. I didn't want to. I hate hospitals, the cold walls, the smell of disinfectant everywhere, the oppressive atmosphere. And no one was there to keep me company. I wanted to call Asher, but I didn't know how to begin. How do you tell someone you're dying? I decided to say nothing. Then Asher called. He said he had plans that night and would come home late. Suddenly, I remembered. Vivian was returning today. Did he go to pick her up? May 18th, 2022. I brought lunch to Asher at his office and ran into Vivian. She was as beautiful as before. The food I made for Asher, she ended up eating it. I was furious. But then I thought, what I gave Asher is his. He can do as he pleases. May 21st, 2022. Visited my mother. She's doing well. I considered telling her about my illness, but then thought better of it. She is happy now. I shouldn't disturb her. On the way back, I ran into Asher and Vivian along with a little dog. I thought I wanted to keep it. The moment I said it, I saw Asher's face change. But I insisted. At the vet, they asked for the dog's name. Luna. I said Celine Luna. Moonlight. May 22nd, 2022. Last night before bed, I asked Asher, "Do your words still matter?" He said yes. I wish I were more naive. Then I wouldn't have seen his evasions. Asher, those who betray sincerity deserve to swallow 1,000 silver pins. May 25th, 2022. I saw Asher in Vivian's social feed. He appeared in a photo she posted from a gathering of young business elites. His face was half hidden in the bottom left corner. Her caption read, "It's great to have a CEO as a friend." I thought so too, and quietly liked the post. May 28th, 2022. We'd been home for a few days and the dog supplies I'd ordered online arrived. I picked them up from the post station. The clerk bundled them all together. When Asher returned, I asked him to help carry the parcels up for Luna. He said okay, and headed to the study. He'll remember, right? June 1st, 2022, Children's Day. Spent a day out with Luna. On the way back, I decided to pick up the packages I'd left at the post station. The staff was kind and helped load them onto my car. Luna's room is on the second floor. I didn't wait for Asher. June 7th, 2022. My sleep has been awful. I can't fall asleep at night. In the daytime, I take Luna out again. Passing a cake shop, I realized I hadn't had dessert in ages. I bought a box of tiramisu. But at home, no appetite. I used to love it. Now looking at the creamy sweetness makes me queasy. June 19th, 2022. Asher seems busier than ever. He keeps telling me not to wait for dinner. He's disappearing from my life, but appearing frequently in Vivian's posts. Sometimes I envy Vivian. My father loved her as a child, then her husband loves her after her divorce, and now my husband also loves her. Meanwhile, I feel like I had nothing. June 25th, 2022. I completely stopped sleeping. Nights of wakefulness and escalating pain. Standing hurts, sitting hurts, lying down hurts. Very, very painful. My reflection in the mirror looks terrible. My complexion wax yellow, hollow cheeks. I should be in my 20s, blooming with youth. But as it gets worse, weight loss, jaundice, abdominal pain, nerve exhaustion, it follows me like a phantom. It will torment me until death. I don't want to die looking so awful. June 30th, 2022. Asher came home for dinner tonight. I haven't eaten properly in ages. I forced down a bite and couldn't keep it. I excused myself to feed Luna, then I coughed up blood. I'd only seen it in movies. Il heroine coughing up blood, holding her chest in frail beauty. I have the illness but none of the treatment. Coughing blood isn't a big deal. Compared to the pain and insomnia, it felt insignificant. July 5th, 2022. Asher asked if I wanted to attend a banquet. I said no. I haven't looked in the mirror in a long time. I can't sleep at night, can't eat. In the morning when I brushed my teeth, I caught a glimpse. Someone I didn't recognize stared back. Hollow cheeks, protruding cheekbones, dark circles under eyes, pale lips, aging overnight. But I'm still in my 20s. It only gets worse now. Weight loss, jaundice, abdominal pain, nervous breakdown. Like festering bone, and death shadows me. I don't want to die ugly. July 11th, 2022, I broke my own rule. I went to the banquet. Asher and Vivian looked perfect together. I wouldn't have thought that thought unless I was mad. Later, Asher saw me. He started toward me, but I ran. I realized I'm losing control over my emotions. If Luna hadn't been with me, I don't know what I'd have done. July 18th, 2022, abdominal pain, sleeplessness. Ate and vomited again. July 22nd, 2022, the scissors in my room had blood on them. When I came round, I realized my arm had cut open. I bandaged it quickly.
Not the first time.
I have an appointment tomorrow to get sleeping pills from the hospital. July 26th, 2022, abdominal pain, puking blood. Eating makes it even more painful. I don't want to eat anymore. July 30th, 2022, lay in bed painfully close to fainting. When consciousness returned, I saw Luna licking my hand. I stroked her head. I grabbed my phone to browse social media. The screen opened to Vivian's beach photos. Beautiful scenery. In the last picture, I saw Asher's hand with our wedding band. August 1st, 2022, more pain. August 5th, 2022. Went to the hospital and got painkillers. August 15th, 2022, met Vivian. She's so beautiful. I haven't looked in a mirror in ages. I know I've become ugly. August 20th, 2022, sleeping pills seem to be losing effect. The doctor advised hospitalization. He said pain would only intensify as it progressed. I refused. I never intended to live until the end. August 25th, 20XX. The original words were crossed out with a black line. 2 new lines were added. Celine died on this day, but Luna saved her. I was supposed to die on this day, but Luna wouldn't let me. She barked and barked so loud. Loud enough that I couldn't sleep. Loud enough to make me restless. Loud enough that I couldn't take it anymore. With the last bit of consciousness I had, I dialed 911. A few hours later, I woke up. There was an 4 in my arm, and a nurse stood by my bed. "Where's Luna?" I asked. She froze for a moment. "Luna is?" I grabbed the bed rail and tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't obey. She helped support me. "I want to go home." "Your body is still too weak. You can't." "I want to go home." I lowered my gaze and repeated it, stubborn and unreasonable. "There's no Luna here. I need to find Luna." When I got home, it was already midnight. I had messages from Asher on my phone. I didn't read them. I blocked him instead. As soon as I opened the door, the cream-colored little dog leaped into my arms. Luna barked and rubbed up against me nonstop, licking me all over. I held her tightly, and suddenly, tears started falling. All the emotions I'd been suppressing exploded like a flood. I sat on the cold floor of the living room and cried for a long time, until my eyes were swollen. Finally, I buried my face into her fur and whispered, so only the two of us could hear, "Luna, let's leave." I wanted to go somewhere no one could find us. Just me and Luna. And loved that I didn't know if Luna understood me. She just looked at me intently with her eyes, and then slowly, carefully, licked away all my tears. And no one in this world loves me. But a dog will always love the one who brought it home. Luna will always love Celine. That same night, I left for an island. I moved into a seaside hospice. Life on the island was just as beautiful as I'd imagined. During the day, I played with Luna on the beach and chatted with locals. At night, I took walks by the sea and I love the ocean. The endless waves, the salty breeze. Just looking at the sea somehow calms my heart. I hired a caregiver, a young woman, pretty and capable. After a few days of helping out, I told her things might get harder later. She saw me cough up blood and asked what illness I had. "Pancreatic cancer," I replied as I tossed the bloody tissue away. Helen's eyes immediately turned red. I panicked, unsure how to comfort her. Her tears fell onto my hand, burning like fire. "Celine, you're only in your 20s. Why something like this?" Girls empathize with girls more easily. Even though we hadn't known each other long, Even though she didn't know my past, her sorrow for me felt so real. Honestly, I wasn't that sad. I'd gotten used to it. But when she gently held my hand and asked, choking up, "Does it hurt a lot?" I started crying too. The pain had long since twisted me beyond recognition. Every morning when I open my eyes, pain wakes with me. It follows me like a shadow that I can't eat. All the foods I used to love now taste like wax that I'm scared to eat because it hurts more afterward. And the pain isn't just physical. The insomnia, the mental exhaustion, the loneliness. I digest all of it alone, day after day. The only one with me is Luna. She can't speak. She just circles around me when I'm unwell, barking anxiously. But when I hold her, she stops barking. She simply licks my hand quietly. "Yes, it hurts," I told Halen. It sounded like a complaint, or maybe even a childish whimper. It's something I should have said to someone who loves me. But I had no one to say it to. I couldn't tell my father. His only daughter is Vivian. I couldn't tell my mother. She's someone else's mom now. I couldn't tell Asher. He's planning a future with Vivian. In the end, I told a near stranger. I didn't return to the hospital for treatment. Treatment would only prolong my suffering. I chose to survive on painkillers and sleeping pills. Each day, I grew thinner. When I looked in the mirror, the person staring back had sallow skin and sunken features. No trace of a girl in her 20s. So ugly, I thought. Life, like a flower, was wilting too fast soon. I couldn't walk anymore. Halen pushed me outside to get sunlight, watch Luna play on the lawn. Sometimes she'd wheel me down to the seaside to feel the breeze. Luna didn't care that I was ugly. She still wanted to kiss me. But I wouldn't let her anymore. Halen stopped asking about my condition. Instead, we just chatted. About my past, her past, gossip, anything and everything. One day, while tidying, she found my wedding ring in the drawer and exclaimed, "Celine, you're married?" "Yeah." "Then your husband," she trailed off, sensing something. I just smiled. He doesn't know. He doesn't know I'm sick. He doesn't know I ran away here. "You guys divorced?" she blurted out, then quickly covered her mouth. "No, then why?" I smiled again and didn't answer. I changed the subject. Days on the island flew by. Happy days are always short. I couldn't hold on anymore. The painkillers stopped working. The pain became unbearable. I couldn't eat anything. I kept a knife hidden in my room. Sometimes it was already against my wrist. But then I'd look at Luna, sleeping soundly nearby, and I'd put it down. Being alive had become painful. I rarely left my room now. But even lying down hurt. So Halen would come keep me company and chat, telling stories from town. She told me about her neighbor's daughter, who'd fought with her boyfriend and threatened to break up. Every night, they'd scream at each other. Eventually, the girl slit her wrists and threatened suicide to stop the breakup. It caused a huge scene at the hospital. Halen shook her head, sighing. It was terrifying. How could someone use their life to hold on to love? Because she once loved too deeply. And when love turns into obsession, it consumes. That's when you start holding grudges, screaming, falling apart. I looked at her and smiled faintly. I used to be like her too. Because I've never been loved in this life, I've always thirsted for love. Halen's jaw dropped. I never would have guessed. "Celine, you seem so gentle." "Because I now have Luna. You should try talking to her more, Halen. Eventually she'll come around. She still has a chance, can stop the damage in time, and start anew. But I have no more chances left. I no longer have the strength. I asked Halen to wheel me for a walk. By evening, the beach was quiet. We walked slowly, pausing often. It was peaceful, and Luna didn't bark. When Halen pushed me back to the room, Luna squeezed in too. I had begun to keep her out recently. She ran to the foot of my bed, wanting to jump up and snuggle. I told Halen to hold her. But she refused, dodging, snarling at Halen, fierce and loud. "Luna." When I called, she quieted instantly. Her eyes looked at me, helplessly resentful. I glanced at Halen. She scooped Luna up and left. Luna barked a few times outside the door, gradually fading away. I remembered the first time I met her. Filthy, skinny, pitiful. Later the vet told me she was riddled with health issues and had been abused. I wished I'd found her sooner. My pain was so severe, my consciousness blurred. I hoped in the next life I'd take Luna home earlier, let her be happy and healthy, never hunger or suffer. Maybe I could have learned to love myself earlier too. Afterward, when Halen opened the door, a tall, thin figure stood in the yard. It was Celine's husband. I don't know when he arrived. Frost of sorrow gathered on him. He greeted her with a stiff, puppet-like smile. "Miss Long," he said, "could you take me to the places she often went?" Halen didn't respond. She didn't like this man. Celine never disclosed her marriage to her, so Halen could only ask around for emotional clues. She was curious. One day, while tidying Celine's room, she knocked over a book that spilled open on the desk. It revealed Celine's secret diary, filled largely with entries about a long unspoken crush on Asher. Even though she pieced together this bittersweet story from what Celine once shared and from the diary's words, she felt stunned. If Celine married the man she had loved all her life, why would she flee and die alone here? Why never reunite before death? She couldn't understand, and she instinctively disliked him. She refused to help. But on the fifth morning she opened the door to find him again. Then she relented. Asher accompanied Halen to the places Celine used to visit, a crowded park where she often brought Luna, a corner cafe where she'd spend entire afternoons, the coastal road circling the island when she wasn't confined to a wheelchair, and the beach, her favorite place of all. She and Luna would rest there, leaning into the ocean, silent like twin sculptures. Asher retraced her footsteps again and again, imagining her life in those places. After 5 days, he knocked on Halen's door again. Fear rose in his chest. "Miss Long, can I speak with you about Celine?" Her expression hardened, hand trembling on the doorknob. After a pause, she said, "No." Emotion overtook her usual coldness. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Mr. Vale, what do you want to hear? Do you want to know what she endured while struggling with pain? Or that when she died, only a dog was with her? Or that she died agonized and dehumanized by cancer?" Celine never complained. But Halen could see the veins in her temples and the cold sweat. Halen did not cry when Celine died. She did not cry when her ashes were scattered to sea. She did not cry when she heard that Luna refused to eat or drink in another home, curling up tight and refusing comfort. But watching someone's life be ravaged by illness, watching them weaken day after day, seeing her suffer quietly and die gracefully as a living person turned to ashes in your hand, how could one not feel pain? Halen's tears fell hard and large. She cried until she could no longer stop, then wiped her face, her voice cold yet trembling. "So, Mr. Vale," she asked, "when she was ill and suffering, where were you?" "Where was he?" Asher wondered. He was with Vivian. Asher stayed on the island for 2 weeks. He located Luna's current home and visited multiple times, asking for her. A tough man with a harsh manner refused every offer. He even tried to chase Asher away with a broom. Asher persisted, returning day after day. After a week or so, the man finally exploded. "This little mutt. What's your deal? Wanting her so badly?" Asher stood, quietly enduring the harsh words until the man slipped. "She's your late wife's dog." The man turned and offered her grudgingly. "Take care of her. Or, if she ever sees you again, she'll blame you." Asher brought her home. But Luna remained distant in the original house. They didn't bond. Still, she slept every day in Celine's former room. He understood. It smelled of her. The dog curled up in a ball on the pillow, quiet and gentle. Life resumed its routine. Asher working, eating, living day by day, just without Celine. Adults cry. Adults live. They eat when hungry, drink when thirsty, sleep when tired. Then one morning, Luna slipped out while he opened the door. She disappeared. Asher searched desperately. That final evening when he came home, he found Luna sitting at the front door. Her shiny black eyes watched him. Then she lowered her head and let out 2 soft barks. Asher picked her up and held her close, just like how Celine used to cradle her. The house was dark, and in the silence Asher held Luna for a long time before letting out a heavy sigh. she wouldn't have blamed me. Solitude had grown too deep. Celine would never be willing to see him again. People at work said Mr. Vale had changed, not growing colder, but gentler. He used to say little, and always wore a stern face. Now, he smiled at small things. He'd compliment you gently over even the tiniest matter. Office gossip flew. If Mr. Vale weren't married, that smile would steal my soul. Has he been possessed? He's just turned into someone else. Maybe. A girl sipped coffee with a laugh. Mr. Vale has been assimilated by his wife. Whenever they mentioned Mississippi Whitmore, colleagues would add, by the way, Celine hasn't been around in ages. Asher passed by the break room and heard that comment. It felt like time froze in that moment. He stopped in his tracks. She wouldn't come back anymore, but Luna still ran outside every day. That afternoon, she waited again at the door. When he returned, she trotted up to her room. He began to wonder what she spent her days doing outside. One day, he followed her. She traced a familiar route, to the park where she dug in a sandbox, then circled through the neighborhood twice, then returned home and sat by the front door, waiting a tea first. He didn't understand. Then one day in the park, a girl gently petted Luna and whispered, "Luna, where's your sister?" Luna let out 2 barks, and then fell silent. In that moment, Asher understood. This was the route Celine used to walk with her. Even though she was gone, Luna still continued. On a certain evening, Asher followed Luna into her former room. She crawled under the desk and pulled out an empty bottle, a bottle of sleeping pills. Then he recalled the crossed-out line in the diary. "I'll never get to the island. Goodbye, Asher." Celine died on this day, but Luna saved her. Those empty pill bottles, the scratches on the door, the words blurred by tears, the unanswered texts, and Celine, who was meant to die that day. All the suppressed grief erupted in a tidal wave and beat him down. Regret transformed into a monstrous beast that devoured him and chewed him over again and again. He sank to the floor, replaying every detail of that day, almost as if punishing himself. What the hell did he do? 3 days later, Simon finally knocked on his friend's door. None of Asher's messages or calls to Vivian were answered, so he turned to Simon. Simon pounded on the door for 3 hours. Asher opened it wearing only a white shirt stained with alcohol. Simon nearly recoiled at the stench. Asher looked disheveled, vomit-scented, but his demeanor was still oddly steady. Stern as usual, Simon quietly entered. The living room was eerily tidy, with rows of empty bottles neatly lined up. Everything else was in order. Asher sat on the sofa, lifting a half-empty bottle to his lips. Simon seized the bottle. Colorless liquid splashed over Asher. Asher glanced at Simon, said nothing, and slowly reached for another bottle. Simon snapped, "Asher, are you fucking insane? You're alive. Holy shit, you're alive, and you're still drinking?" He grabbed the bottle again, uttering only 2 curses, before Asher slumped with eyes closed. Simon thought, damn lunatic. When Asher woke in the hospital, he saw Simon beside him. His head swam, filled with scenes of cursing and scolding. He thought back. He'd been drinking until he craved to vomit, stumbled to the bathroom, threw up, then drank again and never got drunk. Simon set his phone down and stared, as Asher lay staring back blankly. His expressionless gaze was even more frightening. Simon's anger roiled. "You fucking, Celine's gone?" Asher murmured in a voice as rough as sandpaper. "Gone? Where did she go?" Simon was stunned. Asher looked away, tone flat. "She was ill." "What illness?" "Pancreatic cancer." Simon fell silent. As soon as our anniversary came, Vivian called. She said she was sick, wanted me to come see her. When I left, Celine asked me not to go. I didn't answer. That night, she took a lot of sleeping pills. Finished them alone at home. Simon. Asher's eyes lifted, dead still. "Tell me, when she saw me off for the last time, what was she thinking?" Simon said nothing. Asher suddenly sat up, eyes reddened, voice choked with pain. He didn't know if he was asking Simon or himself. "What do you think she was thinking?" Simon bolted. Without a word, he left the room. door slammed behind him. Asher was left alone, staring blankly at the white wall. Soon he sobbed uncontrollably. After discharge, Asher quit his job. Each day, he walked the paths he and Celine had once walked with Luna. Day after day, year after year. He learned to cook using the recipes Celine had written for him. He improved, but compared to her cooking, something always felt missing. He also began suffering insomnia. When he couldn't sleep, he would read Celine's diary, each page filled with his name. He would flip through over and over, laughing and crying. To think she had loved him so carefully, so quietly for so long. Later, Luna grew too frail to walk. A former stray with many health problems, she wasn't meant to live long anyway. Had Celine not taken her home, she would have died the following winter. Luna stopped going out, every day curled in a tiny ball on Celine's old pillow. Asher stayed home too. After meals, he'd just sit with her, and on the day Luna died, Asher was beside her. The little dog shivered and stood up with difficulty. She barked twice at a point in the room, then gave a silly smile, tail wagging weakly. Asher tried to rise, but collapsed back on the bed. Moments later, she stopped moving. He understood then. Celine had come to take her home. Epilogue to the epilogue. As sleep swallowed the last flicker of consciousness, Asher realized this was how Celine must have felt that day. The end.